Hello, so welcome to the first video of the channel. Today we will be covering a book that I found actually quite recently. This was not the first book I wanted to start with, but I found it, like I said, quite recently in my local secondhand store. That's not a secondhand store, it's more of a... If I have any German listeners, it's ein Sozialverkaufshaus for my most likely American audience. Who am I to judge? There are Americans who speak German, but for my most likely English-speaking audience, it's kind of like a Goodwill or a bit dingier. But they have it's a good place where people who are in need can buy literally everything. I mean, china sets, books, toys, clothes. You can buy a lot of light bulbs and hardware things there. You know, I mean, you can buy screws, nuts, bolts, any fastenings or every kind of light bulb. I mean, they're not new, but you can get them. But I love going there because, well, I like secondhand. I bought actually these magazines. I got them for free. They're all from the 70s. And I bought that map at a store. A lot of stuff in my apartment is from this place because you can get really good stuff for cheap. I'm not a very wealthy guy, so it is nice. That's a different story in and of itself. So today's book, it is an old book. Actually, this book just celebrated 100 years. Yes, this is a 100-year-old book. It is the Grundriss der Geschichte der Philosophie, which is the outline or layout of the history of philosophy. This is not the original version. The original version was printed in 1895. Is that correct? Sorry, 1894. This is from 1924. And as we will see, it is celebrating its 100th birthday this year, right? You can kind of tell if you see, the binding is, look at that. The binding is coming off in a lot of places. Yeah, and I've seen books this old in better condition, but I've also seen books a lot younger than this in worse condition. So that's not necessarily a telltale sign of the age. As you can see, a lot of books that I've seen from this time period have, this is called, and I had to look this up, this is called marbling. And it's quite simple. They use paint on water and they, look up paper marbling. You can find more information about it, but it's on a lot of covers of books, I would say, from this time period. I think it's getting more common nowadays, actually. But yeah, it has, a black marbling on both sides. It looks very nice. I am quite a fan. It matches the black binding, of course. And it has the gold letters here, the gold writing. The original author of this book is Dr. Albert Stöckel. Here he is right here. A very friendly looking guy, I must say. Regardless, he was a religious man, and he actually held a seat in the German parliament. He is famous for his writings in philosophy. So, as we can see, when we open the book, we have just a blank page. Some notes here. Those are most likely from a student who had the book. We can see here a very nice half-title page, Grundriss der Geschichte der Philosophie, written in the classic German script. I don't know what year this went out of style, but it did eventually. And here we have the full title page, right? So here we have the name, the title of the book, Grundriss der Geschichte der Philosophie, von Albert Stöckel, from Albert Stöckel. These numbers actually correspond to the years he was alive. So he was born in 1823, died in 95. Once again, probably notes from a student. This is the 4th edition, vierte Auflage. And this particular edition was worked on and published by Dr. Georg Weingärtner, who was a professor of philosophy to the, I don't know this word in English, Priesterseminar, in Mainz. Mainz is a city in Germany, and coincidentally, if we look here, this book was also published in Mainz, of course, from Dr. Weingärtner, in 1924. Right, so this book is 100 years old, something I found very interesting. And we can see here, when we flip the page, Imprimatur. This is Latin, I presume. 27th of January, 1924, from a Dr. Meyer. Now, I did some research on this, and this is kind of a seal of approval from the church. My only guess is that the, books of religious nature and that discussed religious topics needed some sort of seal of approval, and so that is that. We can see here, of course, this book has changed hands a few times. Of course, we can see it has some nice wear and tear on it, but according to this page here, it once belonged to the city library, and I cannot make out the city. I think it might be Berlin, the Berliner Stadtbibliothek. That I'm not sure, but it made its way to the library in Friedrichshain. So that's quite nice. It's interesting to think of where this book started, where it's been, and where it ended up in the secondhand store. Now here we have a foreword from the author. In this, he basically describes that the book is intended to be used in a studies of some sort, whether it be university studies or any study of philosophy, right? But what's interesting is that he describes in this section here how he doesn't want the book to just be used for dictation or simply for students to write word for word the notes that the teacher would dictate to the class. He clearly describes that it should be a guide for learning philosophy and not just a rote memorization, a rote dictation exercise book. And so it's funny, we often have a lot of preconceptions about how schooling was in the past, and maybe we think it was very traditional, but even people 100 years ago recognized the need for materials that we can use actively, and that serve as, like I said before, as our guide in our learning process. So I find that very interesting. Now, if we move on to the next page, we have the foreword to the second improved version and the foreword to the third version. Let's look at the second improved version here, right? So in this version here, it is now, the foreword is by a Dr. Anton Kirstein. On the last page, it was from the author himself, Dr. Albert Stöckel. But here we see that this is from Dr. Anton Kirstein, and basically what he describes is due to the death of the original author, Dr. Albert Stöckel, and due to having gained the trust and respect of Dr. Stöckel's circle of colleagues in the philosophy field, he feels that it is an honor and necessary to keep or maintain the original character of the book in honor of the original author. He explains how he doesn't want to make too many changes. As I said, he wants to maintain the original character of the book, and he only wants to include some of the new important world philosophical perspectives that could be found in the time between the two editions. Now, continuing, the foreword to the third edition, I find quite interesting. If you look at the date here, 1st of October, 1918. Any of you history buffs out there? The First World War ended on the 11th of November, 1918. So this is during the war. This edition was released during the war. In the beginning of the foreword, the Dr. Georg Weingärtner, he has a quick note of how Dr. Kirstein couldn't do this, the third edition, couldn't do the foreword to the third edition due to his death. However, it simply says he died on the 23rd of February, 1914. That was before World War I. World War I started in the summer of 1914. So there's not much info about his death. Very simply, he died on the 23rd of February, 1914. This last paragraph, he does mention the modern situation. Now, he's in the middle paragraph, he simply just says, they shortened some explanations, they lengthened some explanations, they made some philosophical theories a bit clearer, simple notes about any changes they made to the book. But in this last paragraph here, he has a very nice line. Here is the quote. Here is what he says. We hope that this new edition has become more useful and would be a good guide for our students after the hard years of war into quiet peace, into the land of humanity's noble spiritual struggle for the greater good of the truth. Right? So I find that very, I want to use a French word here, impressionnant. It's very moving, I'd say, given the struggle of the previous 4 years up to that point. It's nice that he is, of course, using this book as a guide of philosophy, but also a guide into kind of internal peace after years of struggle, right? And of course, striving for the greater truth, something we are all looking for in life. Now, if we take a look at the contents of the book, it is quite a comprehensive history of philosophy. It begins with what they call the Oriental philosophy, which for my American and English speakers, in other languages, other Western European languages, I'm not too sure about Eastern European languages, the word Oriental, it does not have a negative connotation like it does in, for example, modern America. It is very simply the distinction between East and West. Oriental is East, Occidental is West. And so it begins with the Oriental philosophies such as Chinese, Indian, and Egyptian philosophies, Egyptian metaphysical philosophy, and goes all the way through the the ancient era, the classical era, the medieval era, Renaissance era, Enlightenment, and then into the modern era, modern at the time, of utilitarianism, pragmatism, things like that. Kind of the foundations of a lot of the I'll say movements of the early 20th century, right? A couple oddities that I have found in the book. I wouldn't call them oddities really, but of course the notes from the student, and I can show you perhaps, maybe I can find some here. You can see here some pencil writing on the side. This is littered throughout the book. I can flip to almost any page and just find various pencil markings. I'm not really sure why they did that. I guess it was their way of highlighting. People, put a star next to something. I understand underlining, putting a star, writing a note, but just the vertical lines is very strange to me. Maybe I'm the weird one. In many parts of the book, when they discuss Latin philosophies, or rather philosophies with a Latin name, they change to the Latin script. So we have here the old German script, and then we have a word in the Latin script. Same thing here. We have the German words, and then the Latin script. And that's actually very present in the book, all over the place, especially in the Stoicism section, because Stoicism was initially a Greek philosophy. We can see here all over. Here we have a Greek word. Here we have a Greek word. Here as well, with the Greek alphabet. There's no side translation. So, for example, here, this Greek word is just implemented into the sentence. So, I know that people more studious regarding ancient Greek and ancient Latin back in the day. But, wow, I mean, you really have to have a working knowledge of at least the alphabet, and then presumably the language as well, to read in your own language, which it exists today. It is just quite jarring to see on this page alone more than 15 examples of a Greek word in the sentence, and they just keep on talking about it, which I think is very nice. It's very fun. Probably not what they were thinking when they were either writing the book and or if you were the student reading the book. Well, maybe. I find it fun, so perhaps somebody else might have found it fun as well. I find that very interesting. This book covers many areas and schools of thought, such as Stoicism, skepticism, sensualism, and of course, during the Middle Ages, Christian, what they call scholastics. It is quite a comprehensive history, as I said before. Many names and places and dates of things I've never heard of. Even in the Middle Ages, they do not localize it to Europe. For example, Part 1, the history of medieval philosophy. It is beginning with the Arab philosophy. Of course, as you know, at the beginning of the Middle Ages in Europe, the Arab caliphates were reaching their peak of power. Let's say they were working towards their peak of power. It definitely spends a lot of time on every region of the world in each era. But it appears that if this was truly used for a school textbook, not school, but maybe university textbook, university study, then they seemed, even back then, to have a very comprehensive understanding of the various schools of thought that have existed throughout our time. All in all, it's a good book, very dense, but I think given the content, it actually, in what I have read, it actually is an enjoyable read. It's not written too heavily, and not like Dostoevsky, if any of you have read him, or some of the Russian authors out there. Of course, it is a textbook, so it's just giving you straight up information, but it's actually enjoyable to read, which was, I found that quite surprising.